I was still, yeah, well, I was actually just out of college, and he used to host a night at Stitches, and he was always very well informed and very ballsy and very, out for the little guy and very politically astute and cutting. He was like fucking Mark Twain, man. He really was. And he always had his heart in the right place. Back in the early 80s, he had some renown for being a political comic, standing up against the Reagan administrations, but he never stopped. And after our first interview that I did in Buffalo, New York, when I was playing Helium there, back in June of 2013, I hadn't seen him in a while. I knew Barry as a young comic, and then when I worked at Air America, Barry came on and did some writing there early on. He was writing for Randy Rhoads, and he was a general writer for all the shows, I believe. But he was around, and it was great to see him. But I did not know about his history and his story and his meltdown and his realization that he had been raped as a child, and about the lifetime he spent working to help victims of child rape and abuse, and how he had to push back against the Catholic Church, and how he was constantly pushing for the rights of people and against hypocrisy in government and evil in government, and constantly asking the Pope to excommunicate him on Twitter. Barry was just a very unique and very witty, awesomely righteous, courageous guy. And after our interview, where I met him in a hotel room in Buffalo, New York, I remember that day because the mics were picking up radio interference and had to keep moving around the room. And Barry was sort of kind of raw and kind of vulnerable. And I gave him a guest set on my show and at Helium in Buffalo. And I don't think he'd done stand-up in a while. And it was really just amazing to see him kind of get back into it and start working his brain and pacing in the green room and thinking about what to do and getting up there and doing his sort of beautifully crafted, clever jokes and come off feeling pretty good. And I remember saying goodbye to him in the parking lot. But I guess as you'll hear in the second interview that I'm sharing with you again today with him and Bobcat Goldthwait, who directed the documentary about Barry, it was that interview and that conversation that sort of re-engaged Bobcat in the story of Barry. And Barry was always very grateful to me and Brendan McDonald about the podcast and saying that it really changed the course of his life. And I was just happy I had that effect, if I actually did, for Barry. And I will say this, though, in the last couple of years, Barry had found love in his life. He'd gotten married. His wife also was suffering from cancer, but saw some success in fighting it back with the help of many people who stepped up to support them. And then Barry discovered that he had the cancer, and it was very late stages, and it all happened very quickly. But I'm happy to know that Barry did have some peace and some happiness in his life for those last few years of it, because for most of it, he was in a lot of pain and a lot of anger and always fighting the good fight. He will be missed. He was an important voice. And I'm happy that I have these interviews to share again with those of you who haven't heard them, and also for those of you who are hearing them for the first time, to be introduced to the sweet spirit that was Barry Crimmins. Rest in peace, Barry. I think the first time that I met you was at Stitches. You hosted a show at Stitches. Yeah. You had a political show there. I want to think it was a Wednesday night.
I did Thursdays and every other Saturday.
All right, so I was completely wrong.
Well, you were off by a day.
I remember.
You're too hard on yourself.
Yeah, am I? You're telling me that?
Yeah, I guess that's sort of the point. Huh?
It's not a conscious point.
Yeah.
It's something that evolves naturally, and then you try to get rid of, and you can't.
Getting to do this podcast, I said it on Twitter and Facebook, and I start getting these messages from all these people. Oh, tell Marc, he'll remember me because that time he was trying to order a sandwich, and And I mentioned his shoes to him, and he looked at me kind of funny, but then he snickered a little, but he won't forget that. You know, and there's like, I'm thinking like, this is hilarious. Like, these people think Maron's this approachable guy.
I'm too approachable.
Yeah, you're really approachable.
But like, I'm not saying I don't remember that. I mean, now I'm trying to think about the sandwich thing. Was that a real thing?
That actually was. From what sandwich and shoes, I think.
From what era?
I didn't get any
because
of that.
When I first met you, I think I was in college. I had not started doing comedy probably, and I'd gone to Stitches with David Cross.
Oh yeah.
I think I must have been maybe a sophomore or a junior at college, and he wanted to do comedy, and he might have done a little comedy where he came from, and we went to see you.
Right.
And I tell a story about you all the time, actually. I just because you were innately political comic always, but you still had to deal with Boston audiences.
Right.
And my memory of you is just, you'd start your show no matter what night it was, and within 10 minutes you'd get exasperated, and you'd take a deep breath and go, all right, there are 3 branches of government.
That was one of the,
Right?
Right.
That was a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I used to work with maps.
Yeah. Fake maps or real ones?
Back then, remember the old maps where the United States was always in the middle? And I say, hey, that's good. The United States, we're in the middle. I like that. Until you notice the Soviet Union is here and here. Not quite as cool anymore. It's like the old us versus usser joke.
But I have no idea where you came from. I know that at that time there was sort of a heyday in Boston comedy. I think during the Reagan years, I mean, you were at the top of your game. I remember you had an album come out with Will Durst and Jimmy Tingle. Was it Strange Bedfellows?
Right.
That I think that in terms of modern political comedy, the 80s were it in terms of when it defined itself, correct?
Yeah. I think we turned a corner, yes. I think actually we sort of were able to carry on from where like Lenny Bruce got things. And what, like Lenny did all this stuff, but it had to be about him because he was always in trouble and being... Now, you know what, you're not going to get in trouble for being that guy. Right. And so now you can actually get down to brass tacks.
Yeah, to talking about it with some safety and intelligence without half of it being the menace of like, is he going to get arrested tonight?
Yeah, right, exactly.
But where did you start?
Although I did do one time in Johnson City, Tennessee, I finish a show and a cop comes in and he says, we've had a call. We understand some remarks were made here tonight. Some remarks were made.
Yeah.
And I had to do a show the next night, and the people from Johnson said, "No, get away," because I was going to go. Yeah, there was remarks made. Yeah, let's see. There's a microphone off in there that's used for. But they go, get out. They got me in the car and they got me out of there.
Oh, really? Because they thought you'd be taken back in time?
They thought I was probably spend the night in the Johnson City jail. So I flew out safely the next day.
But where did you grow up?
I grew up in Skaneateles, New York.
Up around here?
East of here, it was the easternmost Finger Lake. Skaneateles is an Indian word that means beautiful lake surrounded by fascists. So
they're a little prouder now, or no?
Yeah, they're good.
Well, what was it like?
Now the town's like, well, it was really quaint and really, beautiful. Now it's all dressed up to look like itself. It's like an artist's rendition of what my hometown is supposed to look like. And as my friend Jimmy Huxford, hilarious guy, says, there's just like, I mean, you can buy, if you need a Christmas ornament in June, you're in the right place. And Huxford says, you can get anything your horse needs except food.
But that's a lot. I mean, sometimes I was saying that to the guy I was with today. We went up to Niagara Falls, is that there's something, as sad as it is up there and as broken as that town seems to be, and I know nothing about it. I know it's obviously economically stifled, to say the least. But I'm sort of, I like that it's still the same town it was. That there hasn't been this effort to either destroy it completely or doll it up.
Right.
That it seems to have the integrity. It shows what it used to look like, and it shows its decay. And it shows a sort of sadness that, is a lot of parts of America.
And they've kept the water feature.
Yeah, it's very popular.
Yeah.
They're one thing but I thought it was beautiful.
Well, when we used to come up here, we'd come up to like Buffalo. Yeah. We'd come to Buffalo for a concert and do acid or something. Then you had the rest of the night to kill.
Yeah.
We go up to Niagara Falls. Back in those days, there was this little island you could get out to.
I think it's still there. No?
But you're not allowed there anymore because they started breaking off or something. But back in those days, they had a sign like the forest ranger made with a wood burning kit, and just hung it on a chain, which lowered it just enough so it was easy to step over. And we would go out and literally, there's this bigger island, but we would get on these littler islands and just yell, you know. So we were like surfing on the Niagara.
Really?
Yeah. That was great.
Make campfires and stuff.
Well, we wouldn't. No, we wouldn't. No, because we wanted. We didn't want to draw any attention.
Right.
But we would just, you could do anything because the roar of the water was so loud, it would cover up anything. So
I found it amazing. I don't think I'd ever been there. I mean, I feel like I might have drove through it, but I'm not even sure I ever have. Yeah. It is astounding, man.
Yeah, it's a real force of nature, and it's less than it used to be. They slowed it down
with the dam.
Yeah, well, whatever. The Army Corps engineers did something to slow
like they always do, right?
Yeah.
Those guys.
Dangerous leftists.
Yeah. We're going to get in trouble. Yeah. But, all right, so now we know you can do some acid and go to concerts in Buffalo. Who'd you see?
Oh, the Who, Rolling Thunder Review.
Did
Dylan.
You?
Yeah.
Like, how old were you? So you're a little older than me.
At that point, I was probably about 19. Well, no, that was 76 was Rolling Thunder, so that would have been 23.
And you were still up here at 23.
Well, I was in and out.
From going back and forth to where?
Yeah, I was in and out. Well, different places. I had a buddy who got into a little trouble in Rhode Island, and so his parents shipped him up to the ski house in New Hampshire, and we kind of it didn't snow all winter, so we just ran a resort for our friends and, took advantage of the low liquor prices in New Hampshire.
He got himself into some trouble?
Yeah, well, a little bit, yeah. But
they had to do something for the kid?
Well, they just wanted to get him out of it, for a while, but he was my good friend. He actually died a few years ago. Great guy. He went out and became a union carpenter in San Francisco for years.
Credico was the other guy on that record, right?
Credico. I just worked with him last week.
Come on.
I did, because he's running for mayor.
Of New York?
Yeah.
How's he doing?
Well, I really think it's turned his way now with all this NSA shit that's come up, because it's sort of like, he's doing sort of like guerrilla, political theater with this thing. But suddenly, it's become clear to at least a reasonable number of people that they've tipped their hands and they really look upon both I say the American political, spectrum. It's like two parties that are 5 inches apart who yell at each other across a 1,000-foot chasm, and we're supposed to worry about them all the time. But we don't have a third party because corporations don't want to write a third check. So, I'm so sick of that stuff and worshiping those people. And Howard Zinn said, go out, do the least amount of damage you can do on election day, and then hold their feet to the fire the rest of the time. And but so many people think they're really politically active by just worshiping one party or the other. And it's two things, and it's so American. It's like a pennant race or something.
Mm-hmm.
Red Sox suck, Yankees suck, Republicans suck, Democrats. And we just keep ourselves busy beating ourselves on the head with the boards they provide for us. But now with this NSA,
more money, you get nicer boards.
That's right. Mm-hmm. But with this NSA thing, they've really kind of tipped their hand, and they've kind of made it indicated that they consider all of us the enemy,
And they don't give a shit.
Yeah, no, they don't give a shit.
It's we're doing that. I thought everyone knew that.
Yeah, right. And I'm nostalgic. I remember the good old days when you felt a little special if the government was watching.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
We're the old-timey spies.
Right.
What happened to the list?
Yeah, I know. I know. And you work hard to get on that list.
You do.
Now,
You think you were on the list at some point?
Oh, who knows? That's so grandiose. But, I think that probably because some of the people I kept company with and a few of the things I did,
When was that? What stuff are you talking about?
Well, a few arrests at some nuclear waste production facilities, which is what nuclear power plant. But, you should truth in labeling, call it what it really does.
Create radioactive carbon.
More effectively than anything. And by the way, when you want to build one, show me your water feature that's going to work for the next 300,000 years, and I'll give you the okay.
Hell of a half-life.
Yeah, but that and the stuff in Nicaragua with Credico and.
I want to get to that because I don't know if I understood everything that's going on. So we're back here, 1972, 70, whatever it was.
Yeah, right.
Or 76. You were 23.
Yeah. And I'd already been out west and done a little bit of stand-up.
When did you start doing stand-up?
Well, actually, when I was up in New Hampshire, we were so poor, I had to go out and win a talent show one night. So I played the kazoo and made jokes about shoplifting. And
those were your choices? Kazoo and shoplifting?
Yeah. Because I wasn't, everybody else was poor and was shoplifting, but I was like Mr. Morality. I'm not going to shoplift, but I knew everybody's methods. And I think I got a lot of laughs saying if I wanted to shoplift, I'd be great at it. But, you guys are morons. I can't believe you're nailed. But, yeah, and playing like the theme song from Leave It to Beaver on a kazoo, and that killed.
Yeah.
And
how long did that stay with you? The kazoo part of the act.
That went right away. That was almost immediately.
So you're doing some of that just to open. I guess it wouldn't be open mics. It was talent shows.
Well, that was just there. We saw the sign. We went in that day. For some reason, we'd been at a joke and novelty shop, and we had it.
Right.
And, you're out there. You got to do something.
And did you like stand-up? I mean, was it something you wanted to do, or did you just
Oh, well,
do it
you know
on
what?
a
I
fluke?
didn't think I was eligible because I was such a farmer. Because I'm from, Jesus Christ in upstate New York. And I didn't think you could be a country boy and do that stuff because everybody was so ethnic and stuff. Well, I went to the University of Miami as a freshman, did the one-year smuggling program. Mm-hmm. And I literally would laugh when some of the Jewish kids talked in the same patter as like Jackie Mason or something.
Yeah.
But they're being serious, and I'm laughing at them like a moron. And then I find out I'm being an idiot, so I try to clear it up. And somebody, the Jewish holidays come up. What's coming up? Yom Kippur. I literally wish people happy Yom Kippur. That's not
the happy one.
No, yeah, have a tremendous Day of Atonement.
Yeah. Hope you get back in the book.
All right. But eventually I caught on that I could, I caught on that you could do it. You could do it, but you had to figure out where to do it. So, I started trying to hustle up stuff, and I ended up opening up for like local rock bands in upstate New York. And you got like 3 seconds to get there. In your introduction would be like, the band would finish. We'll be back in a few, and then all of a sudden someone come out. Oh yeah, there's some guy, his comedy something, I don't know, and that's your intro, and and then I finally got this one place where the guy goes, I want to do comedy, and he goes, I got a sound system, and I go in for the sound system is literally, the thing they had in the old offices where like Madge come in here.
Yeah.
He had
intercom.
The intercom. He had that set up on the stage, and then like Madge's speaker in the middle of the room, and he's going like, "No, that'll be great."
You got to hold the button down.
Yeah, right.
But when did you see it at that time? Like who were your guys you were looking at that where you were sort of modeling, what you wanted to do?
Well, it always sounds haughty. But Twain was always a big influence.
Mark Twain.
And his way of just sort of presenting.
And you'd read him in high school, or you'd read him in college?
And I started reading him. They tried to make me read him too early. Making a kid read Huckleberry Finn with all that dialect and stuff, it's just like, you can drive people. Yeah, well, you can scare them away forever, too. Mm-hmm. But I didn't realize it at the time, but he was doing, like audio history. He recorded how they actually talked, the matter-of-fact racism and how cruel they were to children and whatever, and the dialects, and they were, and there was like 100 different dialects.
See, I don't think I understand Twain enough. I don't think, my experience of reading him, I know he's just this great humorist, but I don't think I've put my time in really, understanding Twain.
He takes a little getting hold of. He did for me, but he really is a big influence on me. But I loved Carlin, I loved Pryor, even when they were straight comics.
What do you think? What was it? What are the tools of Twain? That you kind of gleaned.
Well, it just his incredible use of the language, and understated but extremely sarcastic
and powerful. He could turn something on its head pretty quickly.
And then, for years I read all the stuff everybody read, Advice to Youth, always obey your parents when they're in the room, real funny stuff like that. And that's what got me. But then I started, But then I started reading the later stuff that was really censored. And how they censored Twain was they said he got old and bitter. His wife died. A couple of his kids died. His son died when he was like months old. He'd been through all sorts of stuff. The rest of his family died. He had all these dear friends that had died and whatever. But he was still out there writing essays challenging society, and he's getting late, so he just figured he was going to call a spade a spade. And some of his most beautiful stuff was written in the last 25 years of his life, but it's all censored. Then you turn on like Star Trek, and they've got Mark Twain there, and they're telling him, well, you're too bitter. You've really got, and he wasn't. I mean, he was still in there pitching, which was an act of optimism, which reminds me of, getting to Boston and then ending up with Howard Zinn as like a mentor. Howard always called himself an optimist, and people said, well, how can you be an optimist? And he said, because he studied history, and he would find these little moments in history where someone took a principled stand, and all of a sudden it catches on, and these giant institutions that you think could never be assailed or they're dust in almost no time at all. Maybe that's what this kid Snowden just did. Maybe that's a Zen moment. That's what I like to think of myself as a Zen optimist. Like, you get the prairie fire going there. You wake people enough up to the point where you understand, like, these people that we worship and argue with each other about, would turn into Mr. Burns, release the hounds if you got anywhere near their front door.
Well, I mean, it could be that moment. It depends on how, placated and apathetic the masses are in terms of, I mean, the only thing that makes it not a Zen moment is if people go like, I got nothing to hide.
I understand.
It's hard to make people understand that the infrastructure put in place in the wrong hands, and arguably they may be in the wrong hands now, but they're in better hands than they could be. Maybe. That once the infrastructure is in place, we're fucked. That it could be used by the worst kind of people.
Well, I mean, all sorts of quote unquote private contractors have access to this stuff. I think the term revenue stream probably comes to their head with what they can do with some of this stuff. I fear that. Call me crazy.
Okay, so speaking truth to power in the Twain model, which is like you're entertaining them, and then they go, ooh, like that hurt a little bit. That's attractive, and that's a powerful political stance. That you don't necessarily have to pick a side. You just have to be not even cynical, but you just have to have the courage to turn it in on itself and hold up a dark mirror.
That's right, and it's why I'm not big on conspiracies, because really what's going on right in front of our faces that we're ignoring. Mm-hmm. If I have to create, and the conspiracy stuff to me is just like, you might as well give up. If the fix is in that far, you might as well just give up.
What my friend Jim, who has worked for several presidents, once said to me when I went on a conspiracy tirade, he said, Mark, people here just aren't that organized.
Mm-hmm. Well, right.
Giving them way too much credit.
Yeah, but if we could just get people to pay attention to what's being done to them right in front of their faces, like this latest insult with we're going to violate everybody's civil liberties for our security. Mm-hmm. What? Mm-hmm. And if you can just sort of boil it down and put it you just boil it down into simple stuff, say it matter-of-factly, it's just right there for you.
Well, going back to, what inspired you to do comedy, I mean, at some point, when did you, I understand that you like Mark Twain and you're in your 20s,
right?
But I mean, when did you choose to fight that fight? To fight the fight where I'm like, not only am I going to do comedy, or be a satirist, if you want to call yourself.
Well, that came along. The satirist thing. You know what I think it came from? I never was a Coke guy, so I had my days free, and I would, read and do stuff. I figure I have a job. I report back to the audience, so I could, people are stuck in traffic.
You're a reporter.
Morning. Yeah, to some extent.
Right.
Expository humor to some extent, but. There was no real plan in my head because I was just bluffing from the start. Like the Ding Ho was like the biggest bluff ever. I just came and go like, oh yeah, I know how to do this. And
so when did that happen though? It's because
that was 79. That moves up to 79.
Historically together. So you're bouncing around up here, and you grew up in a religious house or what?
I grew Catholic. Yeah. Catholic, and I've demanded excommunication. I have because in case there's a God.
Please.
I do not want to be associated with certain groups when judgment comes.
You were brought up with a concept of hell and heaven and guilt and this and that.
Yeah.
Having to go to a priest and whatnot.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and then I had to serve Mass every day with one of the worst pedophile priests ever, but he tried, he started to give me the shoulder rub, and I would hit him with an elbow, and he backed up. Now, I didn't know what I was getting away with then, but I mean, it turns out now that they profile a kid and whatever, but this guy turned out to be one of the most, his name was Thomas Neri, and he would orally rape a boy and say, you have to swallow all of this because I'm God's messenger on earth, and this is like the Eucharist. He would anally rape a boy and pray very loud in Latin so that the mother, who he has downstairs, saying rosaries. You say, well, it's very tough. If we were going to find out if he has a vocation for the priesthood, he's up there raping the kid, and then on the way out the door, he takes $5 or $10 from the mother for instructions. He made the children who he was raping say confession to him afterwards. And he looked like Christopher Lee.
Wow.
So he was like Dracula, and nobody else served mass. I got stuck serving mass every day.
And you knew that guy?
Every day. I wrote about it. It's called, it's on my website, Mea Maxima Culpa. I tell the story, but I mean, I now know several of his true victims. I mean, this guy though on the altar every morning would tell, I'm going to hell, I'm this, I'm that. He was trying to drive me out because the pond wasn't stocked when I was there. So you wonder why I have a problem with authority. I'm on an altar every morning, and this priest is telling the assembled congregation that I'm going to hell, that I'm no good. I pour water, the water. Are you trying to drown me? Just like...
He did that in front of people?
Every day.
Wow.
And then a couple times he tried to get me in his car. I'll take you for an ice cream. No thanks, Father. I have to go to North Korea.
He felt something weird?
Oh, I didn't want to be anywhere near that guy.
But you didn't know at the time what was happening.
Well, back then, with our limited vocabulary, and it sounds homophobic now, but he was referred to by the kids in town as Father Query, which meant he wanted to go after little boys.
The word was out, though. Someone must have said something.
Yeah.
Amongst the kids.
Yeah. Well, I know of suicides that resulted from that man. I know of people who are, struggle their whole life with what he did to them, and then the church has just been, awful about it. So anyway, I've demanded excommunication. They have this secret rule in the church that if a priest or a leader of the church is in a situation where the damage can be done to the church, they're obliged to lie. It's literally
it's a document.
Yeah, it's a code.
Yeah.
So why should we ever believe them? Now the last pope who basically, he was at the choke point for all that stuff, and then what do you know? He gets elected pope.
Yeah.
But then I don't know why. I guess he was too pooped to pope. But I don't know if he has the Pope mobile anymore. I think he can only travel now via extradition. So, but anyway, so I grew up with that stuff. I was kind of serious about it. I felt a responsibility to be a good altar boy and whatever. And then I just 3 straight years of just getting battered by that guy every morning. And it was like, see you later. And, I've never looked back, and I have absolutely, and the one thing they hang over you is that they're going to doom you and will excommunicate you and you're the gates of hell. And this child rapist was saying it to me on an altar every morning, that same threat. So, bring your best on, Catholic Church. But if someone's out there who can excommunicate me, please excommunicate me, because I don't want to be associated with the likes of you.
So did he live long enough to be imprisoned?
No, he died. But the church, the church paid off some stuff. There had to be dozens and dozens of victims. So he was
one of the real monsters.
He was a real monster.
Him and that guy Shanley.
Yeah, Shanley in
Boston.
Yeah. This guy was, Neri, he was just flat out evil. He was evil. And, I formed a little organization with people who had to deal with him, because I was emotionally abused by him, so I'm in the club.
Right.
And, so I call it the Hell Alumni Association. And, I always say to my friend Charlie Bailey, who wrote the book about him, In the Shadow of the Cross, I always say to Charlie, whenever I hear Neri's name, I think of 2 words: extra crispy. I'll believe in their hell for a minute just for that one.
So you turn your back on religion. How old are you?
Oh, now I'm mid-teens and whatever. And
you go to college in Florida. Why there?
Well, it seemed far away, and they're
get away from the folks. Get out.
Yeah, and it seemed like it might have been a pretty good party.
Sure, was it?
it was not bad. I helped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long did you go through the whole thing?
No, I went 1 year. Because I got down there and there's no seasons and whatever. It drove me crazy.
And you crapped out on college after a year?
No. I studied geography literally by. Let's not even go into it. But I got around. I went to a bunch of places. But I was.
A bunch of
here's the
different
thing.
colleges?
I mean, I guess we have to go back even further. Because it's just disclosure to make sense of it. I mean, I had, PTSD because when I was very young, the babysitter's father was coming over and raping me for a few months. And it took me until I was about 38 to really deal with that and face it and whatever. So, like, the guy you met, the people, whatever you think, whoever that guy was. Yeah, that guy was, I was just like, I was in a, shock.
Aggravated, hostile shock.
Yeah, to some extent, yeah.
For your whole life.
To protect myself.
Right, no, I get it.
And also, if people got too close to me, I would give them anything. That's the other thing,
Well, when did you, I remember vaguely hearing about this, and it was never clear to me. I remember you had sort of a breakdown a few years ago about it, right?
Well, I mean,
when did you know that it happened?
I would like to say breakthrough.
Okay,
well,
I
always knew, but I never knew exactly. And then a sister came forward, and then there was another person who knew about it. So it's corroborated. We knew who the guy was. He died in a New York State prison not far from here.
Why was he there?
For raping little boys.
Oh, really?
That's what he did.
And he did it...
serving his third or fourth term, and he died. He was gone.
But his game was he'd go to where his daughter was babysitting?
Well, yeah, and it might have been stepdaughter. I haven't been able to figure that part out. But let me just tell the women out there in the audience: if you're looking in the Lonely Hearts ads, and the guy says loves children, they may actually mean that. So be careful of those guys. I mean, I like kids, that's fine, but when they put it in the ad, that's what they're looking for sometimes. So
you had this.
So my parents would go out. I mean, they've been through the Depression and World War II. They go out on a Friday night.
Right.
We beat we beat the Nazis. Let's go.
Sure.
So, and this guy would come over, and and it was. It was really. I was like 5 years old, and it was life threatening. Because it's getting asphyxiated because I was getting my face shoved in a pillow. So that was what I had to get back to figure out. And it's funny how this stuff sticks with you because I really the main thing I do is try to help people. Helping others. It's promoted my healing more than anything. I like AA or whatever.
Yeah.
So and you think you're fine for years. Well, like a month and a half ago, there was a story in the paper about a little girl in India who was about 3 years old who died from being raped. And then I was just sitting, in my living room by myself, and I just thought, that poor kid, imagine raped to death. And then the light came on, like, holy shit, I almost got raped to death a bunch of times. And, you got a couple choppy weeks after that. And that isn't being some wimp and this and people,
PTSD is real.
Yeah, this stuff is serious. And you gotta wrestle every wolf man that knocks at the door and get through it. You can't go around things. You have to go through them. But that doesn't mean it's my whole identity or whatever. I'm like a million other things.
Well, how do you go through that kind of, how do you grieve and resolve that type of anger as a grown man?
Well, it's weird.
What do you think was taken away from you?
Well, my childhood.
Yeah.
I was in shock from my childhood. I was just sort of not present.
Yeah.
And there's so many kids that are like that. There's sweethearts. There's sweethearts sitting somewhere where this podcast is being listened to that are already in that shape. And that isn't fomenting some sort of huge panic or anything. There's bad cases where cops want to railroad people about child abuse, and it's nonsense. But for every one of those cases that you read a huge story about, you could match it with like little 1-inch stories of kids that are, so hurt. And, I think that if children can, politically why it's such an important issue to me is that I think people go along with a lot of stuff because they grow up not trusting their hearts because nobody else has taken the rap for how they feel. No one else has taken any responsibility. So eventually kids figure, well, it's got to be me.
Right.
That's me. That's the problem.
It's my fault.
Yeah. So, and then you begin to behave in a fashion that corroborates your self-loathing, and then you go off, and however long that takes, and then maybe if you get lucky, you sort it all out. Like, I was lucky that I didn't have like a natural tendency to chemical dependency. I was at every party. I was, I drank plenty. I smoked dope. I did whatever. But I, for whatever reasons, I didn't have the chemical predisposition to just go off that cliff.
Sure.
So once I figured out what the deal was and what I had to work out, then it's like, now I'm at, the Mark Twain Club. When the others drink, I like to help. But
at what age were you when you feel like you did have a handle on the feelings from the PTSD? I mean, it was fairly recently.
No,
right?
well, I mean, when I was about 38, so the last 20 or so years,
actively, seeking help.
But it's funny. When I first was dealing with it, and you're talking to a friend about it, and they go, "Are you talking to anybody about it?" Yeah, I thought I was fucking talking to you. Apparently I got to go pay some asshole a whole bunch of money, and he's going to try to put me on pharmaceutical dry ice, which I avoided because, and it's
but let's not completely poo-poo therapists. I mean,
No, I'm not. I'm not. There's great therapists.
Sure.
But what I'm saying is, I was doing that too, but I was breaking silence with people who should trust me and who knew me well enough to know that I was
being serious.
Yeah, and that I wanted people to understand it.
Well, that's the weird thing what you say there, because there is a vulnerability towards, there are certain, I believe in even having a conversation with you about this and in talking to people on the podcast that, human beings are built to handle and carry each other and process.
Yeah.
But when people have, deep issues, even if they want to talk to them, people who you talk to are like, it's a little out of my wheelhouse. Right. I'm not asking you to do anything but listen.
Yeah.
And open your heart.
Right.
And people are like, I can't, I got a thing. And
they don't even, and with me, they didn't even, I mean, it wasn't even that literal, but you just, there was just so you talking.
Wanted to be open
but
about
and it just struck me as humorous. So you're talking, and whenever anybody asked me if I was talking to anybody, I was talking to somebody. I was talking to you, shithead.
But what do you think? In looking back on it as an intellectual person, do you think that your compassion for the underdog and the victims of the world, in any way, were influenced by your heart being broken and being destroyed?
Absolutely. I'm an empath.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a tuning fork for agony, and I would rather risk the disdain of everybody than risk my own self-loathing for not saying what I think I need to say. And that isn't as much fun on a Saturday night as some people are looking for. But
I'm in the same club. I mean, there's that weird wavering between the guy who wants to drag everyone down with the sadness,
right,
or the guy that's too angry to hang out with.
Right.
How do you exist between those two wonderful poles?
Yeah. But I mean, I'm pretty good now. I mean,
you seem good.
I am pretty good now, and there was just a few years where some of the shows I did were like, I mean, it would be great. I would be stuff that I used to stop an audience in its tracks and they wouldn't laugh at, like Death Squad material.
Yeah.
They would laugh at it like it was the beginning of Truth or Consequences. If I was just getting away from the child abuse stuff, they were rolling. A good Death Squad joke.
Were you able? So were you able? Did that material ultimately serve a personal purpose, and you were able to help move through it by doing the material, and now it's refined and you have some distance around it?
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing.
Yeah.
I was accustomed to talking about on stage wherever I was at.
You weren't afraid to lose an audience.
Oh no.
So that gave you a freedom that a lot of comics, don't have the courage to deal with. So you already knew what it was like to piss off an audience.
Oh, I mean, I won't be happy till I gut this room was a common quote. but the thing is, but that's the thing. I mean, that's such a fun dance to do where you really test it. But then, you're going to ad-lib something really funny that just sets it apart, and everything's fine. Yeah. And then they still heard it.
Right.
But I mean, I think I'm
going to defy you people to like me right now.
Yeah. But not because I'm a prick, but because I'm sticking up for somebody. You know, I'm not assigning blame downwards. You know,
but what's interesting is that even before you were conscious of all this stuff,
right?
You were sticking up for yourself,
yeah.
And that what the comedy stage afforded you was to enact your fundamental distrust of all those fuckers,
yeah,
and have your own voice.
Yeah.
I mean, because that's what when people talk to me about why I do comedy, it's like. And I think you're the same way, and I'm just realizing it now, is that, like, I didn't get in this to be an entertainer.
Right.
I get into this so I could speak for myself.
Right.
So, when you come from a place where you came from, whether you know it or not psychologically, it's like, I'm not here to be a song and dance man. I'm here because I've chosen this medium so I can have a point of view and a place to talk.
Right. Absolutely.
And be seen.
Absolutely.
Because one thing that being raped as a child does is it erases yourself.
Yeah, well, it sure can.
So the fight of your life is to really have a sense of self.
Yes, and to survive now, and to get to the point where, I mean, the day I found out who the rapist was, a social worker, where the piece was rerun in Syracuse. The piece I wrote for the Boston Phoenix about it was rerun in Syracuse. I get a call from a social worker. She knows the guy. He was around the corner at the time. She says the name. Oh my God, that's who, And she told me, well, I said, well, where is he? She said, well, he died in prison. I was involved in that case. He died in prison last year. And the first thing I felt was pity for the guy. And that makes some people get really mad at me about it, but I just thought, like, what a complete waste of a life. And thank God. And I wanted to go. I tried to find out from New York State where he was buried so I could go put flowers on his grave to say, I didn't become you. I didn't become what I resisted.
As opposed to go pee on it.
Yeah, right. Well, that's what everybody wants you to do. But I became a human rights activist and not someone that offends human rights. So, and I wrote a screenplay about it. Goldthwait wanted me to write it, but it's kind of gotten mired down. But I called it "Call Me Lucky" because, what if I was raped one more time? Maybe then I do become a rapist. What if I did end up becoming a heroin addict and dying? Like just so many things. I was just lucky. Yeah, I was lucky that I had the wherewithal. I don't know what. I'm like a lapsed agnostic, but if somebody was going to be raped, maybe it was supposed to be me because I know how to. I spent years telling people shit they didn't want to hear. Huh. So this is the thing people really don't want to hear, and a lot of the reason they don't want to hear it are two not terrible things. And one is just sort of typical cowardice. It's real scary to think in those terms, to like graphically get it. But then the other thing is kindness. People don't want to live in a world where people do the shit to children that really gets done to children every day, and they can't, and they have defenses against that. And
denial.
And I can't be mad at them about that. I can't be. I can't. And I also learned relatively early on, thanks to a good friend of mine from this town who said something to me. He's one of the comics that started with Goldthwait and Kenny and me and.
Do I know him?
His name's Wendell Wild. A lot of guys know him. But he's became in this town, in Buffalo, he became a social worker in the school system. He saved so many kids over the years. It's great. But, he made it clear, just because of a talk with him I had one day, I drew the conclusion myself, but it was, you're setting yourself up. Like people who have been abused and been through terrible stuff, they know how to lose. It's a comfort zone, getting up and doing something, like getting out of that pit, your own shit. Well, you like the temperature of it. You're kind of used to the smell. Yeah. And if they stand up and hose you up, it's kind of shocking. But a half hour later, when you've gone in and taken a real shower and put on clean clothes, oh my God, do I feel better? Yeah. So, but a lot of people set up a lot of the sort of approach to child abuse survivors is that they were sort of like expecting the whole world to come up and apologize to us. Well, the whole world is going through its own shit, and it's not going to happen. If you set up that impossible thing, then you're just going to always lose, but you're comfortable there, and here, have some more pills. Yeah. Sit there, and that's that. Well, so, fortunately, I got up, I got rinsed off, I got a shower, I got the clean clothes on, and I had a lot to process. But, as I mentioned it before, but that's my little metaphors. I wrestled every wolf man that knocked at the door for a couple of years, and then they stopped coming after a while. Then they show up once in a while, and you do what you have to do with it. But, I've been 15 years until I had a couple bad weeks lately. So, I'm fine. And I processed that and figured out what I needed to know. Oh, that was the asphyxiation thing,
But you could, you get physical reaction.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Right, you had tightness in the chest. Oh, my God.
Breathing.
You couldn't breathe.
Yeah.
That's frightening, man.
Yeah.
Well, it's an amazing feat you accomplished to not only have the sort of self-awareness and then to actually process the feelings, head on, like you said. And I think comedy must have fucking helped.
Oh, well, it sure did. And it really helped when I kind of got through it and got back to it and went out there. And now I don't have that self-loathing that you have before you work your shit out. So, I get out there and go, I'm pretty good at this.
Well, how long? So that's a relatively new feeling for you?
Relatively. I knew I was good. I knew how to do it or whatever. But the degree of difficulty of what I was doing was always so hard. My whole work is putting the segues together. You reveal the wrong piece of information here, you can lose 15 minutes later on because, it's all about surprise and when you reveal things and whatever. So for me, I could spend 5 or 6 hours putting together an hour set for one night. Pretty much every show I ever did was like that. I worked that hard on it just to have the segues right so it would flow and seem conversational. And
also because you're doing directly, I've gotten away from talking about almost anything but myself.
Yeah.
because I don't want to be tethered to the news cycle.
Right. Well,
but when you're doing politics,
you
have to be tethered to the momentum and the ebb and flow of.
And that's the thing. And the thing was that I got away from in that sense was I know what I'm talking about. I used to keep, newspapers for 20. I can prove it to you here.
Let's go out to the garage.
Yeah, but except it wasn't like it didn't look like I was a hoarder, but it was all there, and you could never find it anyway. And I knew this stuff. Now you got the internet; it's there. So
let's talk about the evolution then of being a comedian and being a political activist. Is that because I assume you end up in Boston. You mentioned the Ding Ho, and the Ding Ho is a Chinese restaurant in Cambridge, and it was a fairly famous place. It's been mentioned on my show before. You got that whole Boston contingent that started there. Stephen Wright, the Clarks, Jimmy Tingle was a bartender there. Right. You got Kenny and Lenny and Don and everybody else.
Right.
Who was the crew at that time that you were close to, if you can remember?
Well, I was.
You come down from upstate.
Well, what happened was my father was in a VA hospital in Martinsburg, West Virginia, and real sick, and they thought he was going to die, and then he didn't. And so, I'm a young comic.
You like the guy?
What? My own man? Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And my mother, too. My mother's visiting now. She's 89 years old.
Oh, wow. Good.
She's great. But
how did they respond to this revelation?
Well, my father was old and quite sick. He was quite sick, so he didn't deal with it. My mother just said, whatever I can do to help, let me know. She was the greatest. So, anyway, I'm in Martinsburg, West Virginia.
Yeah.
I'm in Martinsburg, West Virginia, and my old man's going to make it now.
Yeah.
So I figure I'll hitchhike up to New York and see if I can do some sets.
Yeah.
Well, I'm hitchhiking, and it's raining like hell. It's, pitchforks and hammer handles.
Yeah.
And so this guy picks me up, and he says, well, I'm not going to New York, and I'm kind of cutting around New York because I'm going to Boston. And I say to myself, Boston's in the American League. I'll go to Boston. Yeah. Boston's huge to me, So I go to Boston, and it's Memorial Day weekend, and I go over and I do a set. The Connection has a show at the Springfield Street Saloon, which was what became the Ding Ho. And so I did a set. And it went great. And then the guys pay me like $8 and say, don't tell the other guys we gave you this much money. And I went, man. And then they said to me, Boston will never be a weekend comedy town. Well, this was a Sunday night on a 3-day weekend, and it's completely sold out. It was a weekend night. What are you talking about? No, we only do Tuesdays and Thursdays.
So what is it, 77, 78?
That was 79. So that's when So I went back to the Ding Ho just to see what was going on, and I ended up becoming the bouncer and booking the bands because they still had bands and stuff. And
this is when I was at the Chinese restaurant?
Yeah, yeah. And I became friends with Shun Li. And I said, we should do more comedy. Comedy's coming on. You know, look at.
So you were actually the guy that started this shit?
Well, at the Ding.
Yeah?
Yeah. At the Ding. Well, I mean, other people did use the room, but I was the Ding was what the Ding was first was the first full-time comedy club. We did weekends and whatever.
In Boston.
Yeah. And I knew that in those days, you had to wait around like you were in the National Guard, and if they might call you on the day of the show to tell you to come do it. I booked everybody a month in advance. I upped the pay to like you get $15-20 a set or whatever, and if you hosted, you made $35 or $50, and then on the weekends, and it escalated.
Who were you booking?
Let's see. At the beginning, it was Chance, of course.
Chance Langton,
the great Chance Langton, Lenny Clark, Sweeney, Mike Donovan, Paula Poundstone. Jack Gallagher.
Great.
Steven came along in about 6 months. Then Steven and I became really good friends.
So many of these people have done my show. Yes. Paula has. Mike Donovan was on the live one. Stephen Wright's done my show. Gavin has not. Lenny has not.
Mike McDonald was. Mike McDonald was one of the first guys who would headline a show there. But a lot of people, I know Bob and Ron.
Bob and Ron,
they were tremendous.
That's where I first saw him. I went to the Ding Ho when I was when I started doing open mics in 1982, 83.
Yeah,
that's about when I first saw you.
Right.
Yeah.
So
you were booking it. You were doing
I booked it. I booked everybody, because I had been a comic. I had been around the country. Yeah, of course, I'd been around the country, and I saw how shitty comics were treated. And I just had the idea that
you were doing sets all around the country.
I'd been to the Holy City Zoo, and I tried to get on in L.A. and couldn't, and then did some.
Oh, so you made the rounds. Yeah. And by the time you came back, when your dad was in the hospital, you had tried to get in other scenes.
Yeah, and I saw that everybody.
What happened in San Francisco?
Well, the zoo was about the best I did. I got on sometimes there, and I met some guys, and I mean that's when I met A. Whitney Brown. We remained dear friends.
Is he all right?
He's great. So anyway, I put it together, and it immediately takes off because no one's done it, and I mean there's such great talent there, Gallagher, Lenny, Wright, Sweeney, bang, 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 and it just took off, and the room was really good physically for comedy, those are the days. I'm happy to talk about it here. A lot of times it's just like, your 4 millionth Little League reunion, I don't care anymore. But I mean, it was just great, and then it just built to the point where Steven got the Tonight Show, and then it became more real after that. But it was a really good training ground. And I mean, I just did stuff like if people's families came in, we fed them for free. Drinks on the house or whatever, so that the parents didn't think it was so weird. Suddenly, it's kind of cool your kid's in show business. Rather than a 2-drink minimum and blah, blah. And,
the community.
Yeah, right. And it worked. And I mean, treating people well works. Giving people a chance, and it's self-esteem. You feel like somebody. You treat them like someone. They walk out on the stage, they act like.
Well, this is interesting because it's it's not show business. What it is like the Boston scene, which from what you're telling me, was sort of on your shoulders a bit, because I'm sure there were gigs around. There was obviously there were comics developing there, and they had places to perform. I don't know if Nick's was there yet or
Nick's came along later.
Right. So this is an organic. This is really the heart of. What became the Boston scene and what remained.
I mean, the Connection deserves a lot of credit for sort of like getting the original talent together.
Right.
And then I sort of, but it was like.
You had the other outlet.
I was like the team, the player psychiatrist,
Yeah, they were sending people out, here's your directions.
Right.
And you were like, you can hang out here.
Just and be original. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I never used that trite thing. You have a chance to suck here. I didn't want you to suck, but they usually didn't. But you could try shit.
Yeah, but by the time I got there, it was interesting because I never quite understood, how you were ingrained in all that because, by and large,
Well, I was bitter because of the cocaine. Cocaine really did a lot of damage to the Boston comedy scene.
But not to you.
No. I mean, well, except it damaged this thing that was very dear to me. And, I mean, it got to the point where because I didn't do coke, at one point, a rumor got back to me that I was a narc, which is,
ridiculous.
Fucking hilarious.
But I just from my point of view, coming in as a young comic, I was like, this guy is doing a type of comedy that, these other guys really stay away from.
Yeah.
I mean, because by the time I first saw you,
Sure.
you were aggressively political. There was not, you had your jokes that people could understand, like you said,
right.
I remember the True cigarettes, the illustration.
Well, I smoke True cigarettes. They are truthful because on the front of each and every pack they have a cross section of the valve that will have to be placed in your heart
right,
if you smoke these babies for a while. I can write those kind of jokes. I could be one of those comics, but
it wasn't enough for you.
Nah, I had to
you had a higher purpose.
And I remember, or I was an idiot.
Well, that's fine. Yeah, I know. We can be humble, but I just remember sitting there in the dressing room at Stitches with you, and you kind of held court. It was your night, and there, and people would hang around, and somehow or another, I was drunk, and you were railing about racism, and I don't even remember, what the hell the conversation was, but I somehow brought it around to Danny DeVito, and I don't even know what it was.
I don't either.
No, but I just remember I had this weird memory. It's like, I don't understand what you're saying. You're saying Danny DeVito is racism? Because in my mind, I'd put something together about the way he is short, and who the fuck knows? But I do remember you were sort of holding court, and I still couldn't understand because, there was this whole community of people, but it felt like you were different. And that you were looked at differently, maybe not negatively, but you stood alone.
Yeah, well, sometimes you have to. But it was fine.
But they all must have respected you for giving them time.
Here's the thing: a lot of people over the years have sort of apologized to me because they don't do what I do, and I've always said, no, I'm the guy that's supposed to be doing what I do. You figure out what you're supposed to do it the best you can. And, that's only going to make things better for me. And hopefully if I'm doing it right, I'm only going to make things better for you. Now we get to the next part of my career when I start touring with these musicians. And they really dig what I do. And these people were my heroes. Jackson Browne. I'm listening to Lives in the Balance after eating it on stage, talking about Death Squad somewhere in New Hampshire. Yeah. And I'm listening to Lives in the Balance. And 2 months later, I'm on tour with Jackson Browne. And then Billy Bragg and Dar Williams. And who really saved me and who really subsidized me as a comic was Steven, because he took me out to open for him forever. And he and I would ride around the country on the bus with Tim Sarkis, his manager, and then a variety of tour managers afterwards. And we, we're riding around on the bus, and then I'd get off and walk out, talk to Stevens 3,000 people about the environment. Yeah, as three guys are traveling the country on a bus. Oh, great! Because his crowd was smart. We call it the Both Sides of the Brain tour because I'm kind of literal, but Steven and I have very similar senses of humor, and we really enjoy.
And there's a subtlety. There's a sort of engagement with the I don't know what you would call it. You've got to use your brain.
Yeah.
It's not look shiny.
Yeah.
That there's a depth that they have to do the math themselves.
Yeah. There's a slyness.
But there's literally problem solving to get the joke.
Right.
And that's a very different thing. So basically
imagine riding around the country with him
at the top of his game.
I think he remains it. What a great thing. That's why, I look at these things, like we told the earlier part of my story, but, I get Howard Zinn as a mentor.
Let's just put this in the frame.
Ride around with Steven.
Well, this is interesting because, because I've told people about, I did my own time, trying to do politics, and I was a reactionary thinker, and I think I was, heavily influenced by, Bill Hicks, and also, I found that what you were doing was exciting, and, and I wanted to do that, and I tried to do that, but I didn't think it, relatively recently, once the anger started to dissipate, and once I spent 2 years doing lefty talk radio, and realizing it's very hard to find your actual own voice in the midst of talking points and platforms, whether they're far left, middle, whatever it is.
And there's not much far left that you can find around here.
No, but far left on some level, it's not that it's esoteric. There are comics that do it.
Yeah.
But for some reason, it's a kind of a boutique racket. in the sense that it's a niche market.
Right.
That, that ultimately what you want to do is change the minds of people that don't think like that.
Well, exactly. And that's why we should have been out in America with that station that called itself America. Instead, we're on Park Avenue telling everybody what to do.
Well, there's a lot of problems. I can't even begin to fucking deal with it.
I just wish that we went. There's a steel strike. They're ruining these people in, London, Ohio, or whatever.
And covered it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And put their voices on the air. That's what we did at Camp Casey, and that was a great moment for that network because we really helped build up the crowd from down there.
So, but what I say is that there's only a few guys that do this stuff well. That do it well. You're one of them, and there's a few others.
Yeah.
Who at any given time.
Right.
Political comedy is some people dismiss it because it just doesn't exist in its pure form as it should, and there's only a few people that can do it.
And it's hard to develop an audience. It's hard.
We end up preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
But
you know what? I've got an answer to that one though. The choir are the greatest people in the world,
Absolutely.
and they're out there getting the shit kicked out of them a lot of times. So if they come in and get a shot in the arm from me and some answers, like you can turn around. If you don't love this country, why don't you get out of it? Because I don't want to be victimized by its foreign policy. Yay, they got something. Here you go.
No, yeah, it's great. They deserve the relief and they deserve the support, and it's good to rally.
But I'm happy. But I mean, like I say, I could play the Stevens crowd, and that's not and they get it. I mean, you have to know who you're playing to.
But sometimes as a comic, you connect in a way where you don't even realize it. I'm sure this has happened to you.
Yeah.
People come up to you and like, I don't know you would ever remember this, but you were opening for Stephen Wright. I know who you were, and you changed the way I thought about everything.
Yeah.
Like that one joke changed the way I thought about everything.
I have a great story about that. I'm arrested at Seabrook. I'm handcuffed to a kid. The kid says to me, my friend started bringing me to your show at Stitches 2 years ago. I was in the Young Americans for Freedom. Now I'm fucking handcuffed to you in a nuclear... Good day for a subversive.
Well, right. It's like, welcome. Yeah. But so where was the moment where, obviously getting, knowing what you were doing and standing for what you stood for, how did the alignment... That's a bad word. How did the relationship, alignment would be the other side's word. Well, he was aligned with Zinn.
Yeah, right.
How did the relationship with Howard Zinn begin? Because I know he taught at my college, and I was not politically activated, and I missed out on his lectures and his class. But, he was, the foremost sort of humanitarian historian of what really happened in the world and in America.
Bottom-up history.
Yeah, bottom-up history.
Yeah.
So how did you seek him out, or how did he find you?
Well, we ended up speaking at a lot of the same rallies. And then Howard came to me, and said, Barry, what you do is very important.
Yeah.
And Howard has said such lovely things. He introed me on that. I did an album called Kill the Messenger in 91, and I just listened to it again recently, and I'm really proud of it now. At the time, I heard everything that was wrong with it. Now it's like it's strong. Howard intros me and compares me to Twain, Dick Gregory, Finley Peter Dunn, and Lenny Bruce.
Yeah.
Howard Zinn did that. Call me lucky.
Yeah.
Pretty good. His word stands for a little something. I got to do a show with Kurt Vonnegut once. I got to do. This stuff, I haven't gotten some of the payoffs that you get as a commercially successful comic. But on the other hand, I've had this rich life of these wonderful friends. I wrote for the Boston Phoenix for, whenever I wanted to for 20 years. And I had this great editor, Cliff Garboden, who basically taught me to write by editing me. I've had all these incredibly good turns happen to me, and I'm thankful and fortunate, and now, I'm ready. I'm turning 60, and I'm ready to take, it's not really a victory lap, but I might be able to play the thing to a tie. And I want to go out, find some audiences, and convey some stuff. And like I say, we might be at one of those moments of Zen optimism where people catch on that these people that we argue with each other about all the time don't give a shit about any of us. So we have to care about ourselves and pull together and have the courage to be part of a collective. We get so rugged individualism. Well, it takes guts to say, I need to be in a group. I need to be with more people. I need the help of others.
Yeah, well, because we live in a culture that is being presented to us as interconnected like it's never been before, but it's never been more isolating.
That's right. That's right.
And I think that's a good place to end, but I don't want to, because I want to talk about when comedy crosses over, when you talk about guys like Randy Credico, and you talk about what you guys did in Nicaragua, which I don't even know. Because and I pay lip service to myself in the sense that, like, well, if you can't remain objective, then how are you being an effective satirist?
Well, there's phony objectivity. I mean, you got a point of view. If you pretend like you don't have a point of view, you're a liar. I mean, every day, but some people say child abuse can be good for the kid. Like that phony balance. I just want to be on the level, and you can be on the level and have your point of view.
Okay.
You see?
Yeah.
So I just try to be on the level, and people know where I'm coming from.
But what happened with the Contras?
Well, we went down there, and
you and Credico?
Tingle was there, and there were several people.
And Ortega asked you to come?
Well, we were friendly with the Sandinistas. People asked me if I met with the opposition. I said, yeah, I had 2 layovers in Miami. But what we did was shows mostly for the international brigades that were there building power. I mean, they'd been through earthquake and war and suffering from the worst dictator in the history of the Western Hemisphere until that point, anyway. And that country was just so ravaged, but the people were beautiful, and they could separate us from our country's policy. And so we went around and did these shows. I called it wasn't a USO's tour, it was a USOUT tour. And we got taken at one point, and they all love Credico because he'd been down there a lot, and they brought us up to this field hospital. They never brought foreigners to this place. And there was a field hospital, and it was full of kids. I mean, if any of them were 16 years old, they would be the real senior members. And every kid, there had to be 90 beds in this tent. It was hot out in the jungle, and every kid had lost at least 1 limb. Oh. And somehow it fell upon me to make the remarks for the delegation. And I don't remember what I said, but I remember what happened. When I finished, I mean, tears are coming. I just told them, they weren't my enemy. Ronald Reagan was. Everyone in my country doesn't look at kids like you and think that you need to be harmed and you need to live in war and you need to, because you just want a fairer shake, So anyway, I finished. There's a lot of tears, and then they start to applaud, hitting a hand on the chest, because they don't have 2 hands, a lot of them.
Oh my God!
So I know the sound of 1 hand clapping, and it's my conscience. So when I continue to, I mean, that has stayed with me my ever since then, and it's kept me as honest as you can keep somebody like me.
Well, this is a certainly a unique comedy tale. And I appreciate you talking to me, Barry.
Thank you very much, Mark. I appreciate it. Yeah, you bet. And thanks so much for having me. What an honor it is to be on this show.
It's great to see you doing so well.
Yeah,
and we'll go do some comedy later.
Yeah, let's have fun.
And the next interview is me, Bobby Goldthwait, and Barry Crimmins here in the garage. And that was in 2015, summer of 2015, promoting Bobby's documentary about Barry. Time is flying by, folks. It's flying by for all of us. Use it the best you can. I had some weird memory, like, that I can't get out of my head, of that back room at Stitches when you used to have your night at Stitches. Mm-hmm. What was it? What night was yours? Sundays?
Well, I was Thursdays, half the Thursdays and half the Saturdays. So I was there on Thursday nights, and then you'd hold court in that little fucking ticket booth that was backstage.
Yeah. So I'm in there, and you're talking about racism and Hollywood. I don't know what the hell it was.
Yeah.
And I was shit-faced, and I'd gotten it in my mind, but somehow or another, because Danny DeVito was so short that he was being used, and it was similar to what you were talking about with racism, and I just remember at some point, Barry just goes, I don't know what the hell's going on. Maron says Danny DeVito is racism. And then I don't know where the conversation, how that happened. Like, I just remember you, like, it registered with you, but it made no sense. I don't think it did make sense. But in my mind, it kind of makes a little sense.
Yeah.
That he was being exploited.
Well, it's bigotry.
We have to stop.
Right, it's bigotry because he's short.
We have to stop the exploitation of Danny DeVito.
Well, right, the $1 million.
I'm all for that.
Barry Crimmins, Bobcat Goldthwait. Both people I've had on this show. I think, Bobby, I've had you on several times.
Yes.
Is that true?
Many times.
Yeah. And Barry I've had on once. But it was a monumental event.
Yes, thank you.
During that conversation, I remember we had a good talk. It was very intense, and then he came with me to the club, and he did some comedy.
Yeah,
and then we hung out in the park.
And I had no plan.
Yeah,
I had no plan to talk about what I talked about. But that's you. You get. You know,
but you had been talking about it.
Yeah, no, I'm very comfortable talking about the fact that I'm a rape survivor because I didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
You know, part of me feeling that Barry would be comfortable in making a documentary was me listening to him on your show.
Yeah,
and I got to say, that was a game changer doing that interview with you, and thanks, man.
You're welcome.
It did... And I'll tell you, I heard from a lot of people, some of whom, you know, I was able to provide some assistance for, and that helps my continued
is that true?
Healing. Yeah. You know, we go back and forth. They would say, oh, nothing like that happened. It's amazing how people really don't. You think everyone exaggerates. Most of the time I find that they start off sort of, well, you know, nothing like you went through. And then they tell you this heartbreaking story, and you go, look, man, we got a few things to chip away at here.
But the power it has to help people in terms of a thing that most people carry with them as a secret, or they're ashamed of, or they don't know how to speak about, is pretty profound.
And you shouldn't, and that's the whole thing. That's why I'm really, you know, I mean, people can get too strident about language pretty easily, but when someone says, oh, you admitted you were raped, I disclose, I didn't admit. That makes me complicit. And then one of the big tricks, particularly with child sexual abuse, or, you know, she was asking for it mentality, is that you are somehow complicit in these crimes that are done against you. And you wouldn't say you admitted getting hit by a hit-and-run driver or held up at gunpoint, and it's the same thing. You're a crime victim. That's
true. Yeah, changing the language.
Yeah.
But when you made the movie, Bob, you must have, the awareness that you were going to have to balance, you know, the story of his rape and also the humanity of his comedy.
Right.
I mean, what was the trickiest part of making the movie like that?
There was, I wanted to lay a bunch of pipe so people knew who Barry was and what he meant in the comedy world. But I also wanted to kind of tonally put some things in there so it wouldn't be such a big, you know, jolt when we start discussing his rape. So it was very hard, you know. I mean, but you know, as soon as I say to him, I go, "It's really hard making this movie."
Yeah.
Barry's like, "Really?"
Yeah.
Really?
I'm awful worried about you.
Yeah, I'm really, like, it's really killing me.
He's been through absolutely.
I think it was about as hard as, you know, when Barry disclosed on stage in Boston. It was during a show, and Steve Sweeney was going on, and Steve's really a funny guy and a guy that influenced me a lot, but was like kind of insisting on closing.
Yeah.
And Barry
said, okay, go ahead.
He's about to disclose. He knows he's going to do this, and Sweeney's like going, I got to close. And he's like, okay.
Yeah, and then Sweeney got up there and he's just going, Jesus Christ, God.
Barry Crimmins.
Damn.
Yeah. Let's hear it for Barry Crimmins again.
But that was the interesting thing about the film, too, is that these guys who I knew when I was a kid doing comedy in Boston, you know, these are working class dudes that come from a regional sort of disposition around homosexuality, around, you know, whatever it is.
Right.
All these guys were supportive. They were understanding that the community, you know, came around him. They felt bad. Right?
Yeah, I think that's basically it. I think some people were skeptical or leery because they're scared of the story, you know. But there was amazing. So I had more than enough support. Bob was one of the first people I told, and he was amazing. And, it was weird. He almost went like, all right, because it's like, oh, the Crimmins mystery is a little bit solved here,
Right.
Finally, we know why.
Yeah, because we were trying to figure this out, all this anger and, Well, when he disclosed to me, it was a sense of relief. Here's a guy I've known and loved since I was 16 years old, and I was like, oh, okay, this all makes sense,
And then some of the tough shots in the movie.
Yeah.
It's 10 o'clock in the morning, and Bob's going, let's get you a couple of beers. I'm going, it's 10 o'clock. I don't drink at 10, so I think you got to have a couple of beers.
Well, I mean, do you want to know the real? So when Barry tells the stories of his rape.
Yeah.
Rapes.
Yeah. The first time he did it, it was like 10:30 in the morning, and it's the only time I've ever done this. I said, listen, I think we're doing this movie for the same reason, and I go, can we get Barry a beer? I don't want a beer. I go,
and then there's two beers there.
Yeah. Then I give him another beer, and I said, I need you not to tell the story. I need you to remember the story.
Uh-huh.
So, and that's the take that's in the movie.
When he goes into the basement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so...
Well, no, that was...
Yeah, not when you went into the basement,
right,
when you told the story of it. Because when he went into the basement, we had a huge argument. I mean, a real fight. Like I didn't want him to go into the basement.
Every time there was something... And I mean, you think when you make a movie, you're an independent filmmaker...
Yeah.
You're laying your whole career on the line every time you make a movie. You might not ever get to make another movie if you fuck up. Mm-hmm. So... But every time there was a chance that harm to me, he would see potential danger or harm to me or something good for the movie. He was for he was for me, and then I ended up, and I was for the movie.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, I wasn't going to go into that. I wasn't going to go back there and allow that place to have that kind of power.
Right.
I wasn't going to think about that place for so many years and have it in my head and then be afraid to walk in there. I had to go in there as a child. I had no choice. As an adult, I can walk in there. And I also wanted to sort of demonstrate that there isn't some sort of supernatural power that these criminals have to imbue these stone walls with, evil.
Right.
It's like, it's a place I hope a lot of kids play
only
there.
Only the Catholic Church has the power.
Well, yeah, that's right. That's right. We can get there real soon.
They can imbue walls with evil quite easily. Just throw a stained glass window up there.
Yeah,
done.
Absolutely. That's right.
Yeah, the production design. It's on purpose, I think.
What was great in the movie is that when you see the footage of you on TV doing those jokes, that what I didn't remember was they were so accessible, and they were also so relevant now, that they were great jokes, and you were funny up there, and you had a whole angle, and it was all complete. You were the whole package. And then it shows you down there giving, performing for the Sandinistas.
Yeah.
And that was very moving. Like the thing that I think people should know about this movie coming into it is that it's not some movie where you're like, oh my God, how are we gonna, like here we're talking about you being raped as a child and how you move through it. But the balance that you were able to get, Bob, with, just the part of Barry that enabled him to survive and function, which was, his wit and his desire to help and perform, to use comedy as a way of expressing his anger, really kind of is a great part of the movie. It kind of moves it along, and then to see Barry at this age, trudging through the winter in upstate New York is I don't think you realize how hilarious you are.
Oh, yeah. Well, that whole thing, let's just talk about that for a minute. So Goldthwait.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody knows I cut wood and all that, but the thing is, right before we shot, 2 months before that, I got T-boned and my knee was broken in two places.
Yeah.
So he's got me hauling a maple log up the hill.
How many beers did that take?
Yeah. Well, a maple log up the hill. And then I'm trying to split wood standing on one leg, and that knee's bad too. So I hadn't hit a piece of firewood and not split it for years. Now all these people are contacting me to advise me on how to split firewood. It's like, oh, fuck yourself. I know how to split firewood.
Right.
But when I turn to Goldthwait and I say, this isn't fucking working in the movie, I was saying, okay, we're not going to see this, and of course now it's at the top of the movie. Prick.
You just wanted to establish the character.
Yeah, no,
that is Barry Crimmins.
That is Barry
Quickly,
Crimmins.
the fact that your life, the life that you had as a comic, and the important stuff you did as an activist, but now also being an advocate and a resource. Right. That you have been all through this since you disclosed is now culturally identifiable and relevant, and you're more available for yourself and for others now.
Sure.
And that's a great thing at any time.
It's unbelievable, and helping others is a way to really know. And anybody who's in a 12-step program knows this. And when you notice the progress you made when you're helping somebody else.
Sure.
So you see where you were a while ago, and you feel fortunate for being that much further along. And I get that all the time dealing with abuse survivors.
And also you get the selflessness, the getting out of your own
getting out of your own way. Yeah. And I mean that to me is and really. Everyone was so worried about me when I did the child pornography investigation.
I didn't know about that. That to me was the most devastating part of the movie. Is that because you looked like emaciated and like you'd been depleted. That you went down this rabbit hole, but you changed legislation.
And I mean, what I did was I changed the corporate culture at AOL. They had to get rid of that. What was going on there. They were making money. Back in those days, it cost $3 or $4 an hour to be online if you were online over 10 or 12 hours or whatever it was. And then all these guys are spending $1,000, $1,200 a month because they've never had a community. They've never, this is
pedophiles and child pornographers.
Yeah. And
people who shared those things.
Right. And so, and I'm telling AOL, and they're playing it dumb because it takes a half hour to upload one picture, and they're getting paid. So they're making $1.50 every time a picture goes up. But I'm one of the first witnesses, who saw in almost real time photographic evidence of a kid who was raped 10 minutes ago. It's terrifying, and I'm not getting, and they're playing it dumb with me. And I went back and forth with them forever, and then finally I ended up, because of my friend Lana Lawrence, they knew they were going to do this hearing in Washington, but the hearing was going to be about kids and pornography on the internet. It was like my 16-year-old son's to a Playboy magazine on the internet. It's like, oh no. But if I hadn't been at the hearing, you would have heard the word child and you would have heard the word pornography, but you wouldn't have heard them in a row. So I cared about the children in the pornography, and I saw it was photographic evidence of rape and sexual assault and exploitation of kids. And if you've seen it, you would never call it kiddie porn, which sounds like the Bunny Hill or something. Right. I mean, it's tough stuff. If you know what it really is, it's tough stuff. And then I've talked to so many people who know they were photographed and whatever, and they talk to me about it. It's really heartbreaking because there'll be a 50-year-old man crying, saying, "Well, it was kind of a pine cabin. The priest used to take me there, and he was kind of bald, and they think that I saw it, and they're embarrassed with me. And I go, look, man, if I saw a picture like that, and I saw a lot of pictures like that, if I saw a picture like that, all I saw were your eyes. I was trying to see, is this kid, how long does this kid have? What's going to happen to this kid? And what's going to happen to him or her? That's all you see if you're there, if you're witnessing it for the right reasons. And if you're one of the monsters is into that stuff, you would never recognize this person, particularly as an adult, that it doesn't even register with them. So, I mean, I was happy that I could at least convey that to a lot of people. But anyway, we went in, and they had a cocky lawyer from AOL who just figured he was going to, as a nightclub comic. Bring it on, shithead. Yeah. But here's the thing, Mark, and this is Washington for you. I went into that hearing, and I gave my testimony, and clearly the AOL guy had been given my testimony because his printed testimony was direct responses to my testimony they asked for in advance. Nobody gave me, the kid defending the rape kids, the advanced testimony of the other guy. So someone tipped, leaked it. Yeah, to him. Yeah. And I still, false modesty aside, kicked his ass. And by the end of that thing, like there's one thing Bob has in the movie where the guy's saying, well, Barry doesn't care about, he doesn't seem to believe parental control software works. And I go, Link, it works great if the parents aren't the rapists.
Right.
But once the parents are the rapists, it's kind of a useless thing now, isn't it? So, and you can just sort of see by the end of this thing, this guy would come in pretty cocky when he snaps at the end and tells the truth by mistake.
What do you do?
He said, well, I just want to stop you right there. We at America Online have a strict 3 strikes and you're out policy concerning child pornography. And I was like, I love baseball as much as anybody, but that's not a 3-strike offense in any fucking league, in any league. So, and when that happened, that was the KO blow. He was done.
Right.
He was done. It was like there was no backtrack. He publicly said that they would allow people to stay there who had been caught. We don't have any 4th-time offenders on child porn. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So it was over. But when he said that, if you look at him, he's a beaten man at that point. He had taken, it was like the 14th round of a 15-round fight, and they should have stopped it.
I think the other thing that makes the movie so beautiful is that, outside, just in talking about this stuff and the weight of it and talking about comedy a little bit, though, is the love that you guys have for each other for so long.
Yeah.
That, like, there was an intimacy there, around, your trust of Bob.
Sure.
And Bob's, knowledge of you and his trust of you and also, the line, that which you could operate at, not crossing each other's lines, but then also learning new territory in terms of, what you could achieve together. And it was a beautiful thing.
A couple things there. Bob was, he was so protective and thoughtful towards me. I trusted him with my life, and then I stepped back. It was hard not to say, your friends and these different people are talking about you all day, and I was never there because I didn't want to skew anybody, tell them the truth. And so I had to, it took some self-control to not ask a bunch of questions, but then I got used to it. But I trusted Bob. Yeah. And it was a very wise investment on my part, and he made a beautiful movie. And what I love about the movie, and Bob said some stuff to me early on that just came, he said, look, I don't want it to be one of those documentaries where 38 people are sitting in front of the same bookcase. Yeah. And they made this beautiful cinema, Bradley Stonecipher, the cinematographer, did amazing work, and Jeff Stryker, the editor, did amazing, and Bob pulled the whole thing together, and the whole crew was tremendous, and they were so it was easy on one level, but on other levels it was sort of like, I wonder what's going on in there. Yeah. It was like being outside of the maternity room for a year.
Robin was my best friend. Yeah. So the movie.
Yeah, he got hit with a meteor in the middle of the thing. Emotional.
Yeah. And it sounds corny, but I honestly was like, oh, okay, well, what would he want? I assumed, well, he'd want me to finish this movie. So I spent, but it was just insane. The year was just, divorce and
loss.
Break up with a girlfriend decorating the Christmas tree, and my best friend kills himself. But at least I had a baby rape documentary to work on 10 to 12 hours a day to cheer me up.
And I will say this. Go ahead.
I knew he was going to work his way through, but I knew, because he's such a hard worker, that I knew that even though this is a tough story to tell and so on, that I was glad he had it to tell, because I knew when I heard he was getting back to work that was the beginning of the path to, getting through the grief, the incredible grief, but the courage he showed and the professionalism to get off that deck and get it done, so that we ended up at Sundance. Unbelievable.
And you know why you were both able to do this thing? Because you're fucking comics.
Yeah, right.
Think about it.
Truly.
I mean, you know what I mean? That's what we do.
Yeah.
Oh, watch me shut my emotions off.
Yeah.
It'll be the most entertaining emotional shutdown you'll ever see.
Yeah, I think it's my personal best.
Yeah.
I think it really is. Yeah, I mean,
it's an amazing, unique movie, and I'm happy you guys are seeing such success with it.
Thanks. Can I say something really quick? You know, and you can cut this out if you want, but, you know, you're kind enough to have me direct your new special, and I've seen you do stand-up over the years, but it was really great. What I loved about the specials is that you really brought it. I mean, I hope you're happy with your performances because you were really on that night. Like, you were really dialed in.
Well, it was one of those times
and you
where,
can't say that, so I want to say that.
I appreciate it.
I could say he called me up and was enthused, and San Maron just absolutely
I think my favorite moment was when I was laughing and I forgot to call cameras. I'm like, hey, dum-dum, you're directing. Stop watching the show.
Well, thank you, man.
I think it came up great.
Thanks for coming by, fellas.
Well, it's an honor to be on the show again.
Yeah.
So relatively soon.
And I'm glad
it's an honor to be on it with this guy and both you two.
Yeah.
And I know you guys have been working on stuff together. It's all.
We're okay.
It's all pretty cool.
We're okay.
Yeah, it's all pretty great, man.
We're doing okay.
This seems like the time for an untimely death.
Yeah.
Oh, you.
And that was.
Gee, and I guess who that's going to be.
And that's when the space debris landed on the garage.
The last
three of them.
Skylab.
All right. Thanks, guys.